Recording. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our session for Firefighting to Flow, Reducing Daily Chaos with Lean. My name is Katie Lebetz. I am a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and Certified Project Management Professional. I am the president and CEO of a lean consulting firm called Learning to Lean, based out of Hortonville, Wisconsin. I'm also an emotional intelligence coach. I'm an author. I've written 3 books and been published numerous times in a variety of different magazines. And I have over 20 years of experience in project management, continuous improvement, leadership, and coaching. I'm wearing an inspirational t-shirt today. My love language is root cause analysis. So I like to wear funny t-shirts. And I have those on my website too, if you're one of those that like funny t-shirts or stickers. Because we have some friends today from Kubota, we had to make sure that we included this. So we are a Kubota family here with a tractor, a skid steer, and a lawnmower. So we support Kubota. My dad supports the other one that has green things. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And please feel free to ask me any questions that you may have along the way. And we're also going to be doing some questions and survey questions. So from firefighting to flow, why we're going to talk about why being busy isn't the same as being effective, and how lean creates calm, predictable workdays. And that's really the goal, right? We want calm, predictable workdays. And as we talk in all of our classes, we want repeatable processes with predictable results. We want to minimize the variation and make sure that we have those predictable results. So why does this session matter? So as we all know, many teams feel exhausted and not ineffective. Firefighting isn't usually rewarded until it isn't. So you may get the, oh my gosh, you did a great job. Thanks for solving that problem. But if it happens all the time, then it doesn't get celebrated anymore. Lean helps us to design work so fewer fires exist. And that's really what we all want, right? So firefighting is a system problem. It's not a people problem. So if you've been to any of my sessions, you know that we talk about it's the process, not the person, right? So we're saying that firefighting is a systematic problem or a symptom of a bigger issue. It is not a people problem. So we're going to go ahead and do a poll here, and we're going to launch that poll. And so your first question is, how would you describe most workdays? So constant firefighting, a mixture of chaos and calm, mostly steady flow, or it depends on the day. So if you can enter your response in the flow questions. And if you are having a hard time getting to those questions, I'll put up that QR code for you. So you want to just answer the first poll question. All right, so we have a tie between a mix of chaos and calm, and mostly, or depending on the day. I agree with you. For me, it depends on the day, right? It can be a complete disaster, or it can be something really good. So we'll get to the next question in a second. So what does firefighting look like? So constant interruptions, right? You just want to be able to participate in a meeting, or you want to take an online training like this one, or you close your door and you really need to concentrate. So if you're like me, sometimes when I'm working on like really detailed analysis, I'm using Excel or I'm using Minitab or something like that. I really need to have that focus time, and you're trying to do that and you're constantly being interrupted. People are trying to look through the door or look under the crack in your door, like, can I come in? The same problems keep coming back. So it appears to be Groundhog Day. Everything feels urgent or hot. So I think the word hot has lost its luster, right? So hot is no longer a meaningful word for most of us. It used to be that people would put that on there and then, oh my gosh, that's the priority, right? But when you see it all the time, it no longer has a meaning. Decisions are made reactively, and you're busy all day but have little progress. So busy all day but have little progress. So we all understand that. You get to the end of the day and you're like, what did I do? Okay, so your next poll question is, which one of these things happens most often to you? So we have some responses already in regards to what happens most often to you. If you're not on that, I'll put that QR code back up there. So what happens most often to you? Same problems keep coming back. Everything feels urgent or hot, busy all day, little progress. So everything feels urgent or hot is something that apparently we can all relate to, right? Everything is a fire. Everything is firefighting all day, every day. And you get to the end of the day and you're like, what did I do today? What was on my list of to-do things? Or, it's the same analogy as you're driving home from work and you have no idea how you got home, right? Because you're thinking about all these other things. It's the same type of situation. So let's look at what is flow. So when I think of flow, I think of a few different things, and maybe you do too. First of all, I think of a river, right? So a river that has some calm parts to it and some fast moving waters, and with those really large boulders that we can see in the picture. So if we're trying to navigate through the calm waters, even if there were some big boulders or problems, we could easily move around or pass them. No big deal. It gets tricky when the water's moving fast, right? And we have a lot of demand and the boulders are suddenly in front of us. And we have to make a really quick decision to go left, to go right, or even try to go over them. That stress is real and very similar to our everyday life situation. When I hear flow, I also think of a traditional flow chart, right? Where we have clear and logical steps. We have decisions that are available and options to make or take a more clear path to our desired destination. So the river really is our everyday life. It's our current state situation for most of us. And the flow chart is what we want our future state to look like. And I've definitely been on both sides of this. So what does flow look like? So flow looks like predictable work. So as you've heard me say about a million times, repeatable process with predictable results. Flow also looks like clear priorities. And I often, when I go to visit companies, I ask people, how do you know what to work on today? How do you know what your top priority is today? How do you know what to work on today? And unfortunately, in the majority of the companies that I go to, they'll tell me, I wait for my leader or the person that's in charge of that area to tell me. And that's not clear priorities when you have to wait for somebody to tell you what to do. Fewer surprises, right? I worked for a boss that used to say his number one rule was no surprises, right? Because surprises means we don't have that repeatable process with predictable results. And we want problems to be addressed once. We don't want this to be whack-a-mole or Groundhog Day, right? We want this problem to permanently go away, right? So the problem is surfaced, okay, we understand that, but how do we make it never come back again? And we want time to improve the process. And that's a huge part of it. Even speaking about going to any of the training classes that we offer or doing a Kaizen event, right? A Kaizen event where we have focused time to improve a process is a indicator of flow. But when you're sending people to training or it is a situation where all you're doing is fighting fires all day and there's no time to improve the process, then that is, again, firefighting and not flow. We do need to take time to improve our processes. So firefighting feels productive, even though it's not. Flow is productive. So firefighting at the end of the day, you're like, wow, look at all that I accomplished, right? And sometimes when we embrace flow at the end of the day, we can't say, oh, look at everything we accomplished, because flow may take us a little bit longer to be able to complete, right? Flow is taking our time to be able to improve our processes, not only short term, but long term, in realizing that that is not the same thing as firefighting, and the timeline is very different. So let's compare the two. So what is firefighting, right? Reacting, urgency driven, individual heroics, and fixing systems. I want to talk about individual heroics here in just a second. Flow is designing, so we have a process, priority driven, right? So we understand our priorities, and team systems and solving cases, right? So cases, not individual situations, but a case, and a case is a process or maybe even multiple situations together. So that's the difference between firefighting and flow. But I want to talk to you about something that I'm very passionate about. And that is flow happens when we stop relying on heroics. Now, what are heroics? Now, I will tell you from my own life experience that within your organization, there may be one or two or several instances of people that are doing a Herculean or heroic effort to be able to allow your business to continue operating on a day-to-day basis. Now, what do I mean by that? I was helping an organization that we were looking at a process from the moment they got their order to the moment that it was released to their shop to manufacture their product. And the first two steps were pretty simple. We can understand those. We receive the order from the customer, the order gets processed in the system. But where the heroics came through was their planning process. So their planning process is, if you could visualize in a value stream map, we had a couple steps, and then planning was like this, and then a couple more steps to release it to the shop. In the planning process, that person was doing a Herculean effort. Every day, he was running the plan 4 different times during the day with updates. So again, he was implementing firefighting into his practice. And it was so much work that it was apparent in that value stream map. And I asked the person, I said, what happens? Number one, do you get to go on vacation? And he said, well, yes, I do take vacation. And another lady popped up and she said, but when he's gone, it takes 5 people to take over his job while he's gone. That's what I mean by heroics or Herculean effort. This is happening in your business on a day-to-day basis, and you probably don't know about it. Most people won't raise their hand and say, oh my gosh, I'm doing all this. Or maybe they are raising their hand and you're like, yeah, whatever. Or it doesn't come out until you do something like a value stream map where you're like, what is going on here? And I can give you example after example for customers that this is happening within their organization and they didn't find it out until they started doing some further investigation and focused on flow instead of firefighting. So chaos doesn't come from bad days, it comes from weak processes. So let's look at the most common cause for chaos or firefighting, and then we'll talk about how to solve it. So stay tuned. Root cause number 1, no clear standard work. So what does it sound like? We don't have standard work because everybody does it a little bit different. That's just how Joe does it, right? So these are the excuses for why we don't have standard work. We don't have standard work because everyone does it a little bit different, or this is just how Joe does it. You may hear new hires struggle for months. Or the other thing you may hear is that we have a high turnover rate. What's the impact of not having standard work? Variation, which means we have same process being done different ways. We have errors, which show up as scrap or rework. And we have questions, and which leads to interpretations, which, depending on who you ask, you may have a different answer to the question. And for some of you that have been through my classes before, you look at this and go, oh, here she is on her standard work pedestal again, talking about standard work or preaching about it. I want you to pretend, and some of you have seen this and some of you haven't, I want you to pretend that we have just started a new company and our company is just about folding t-shirts, right? So we're working at a company and that's all we do is folding t-shirts. And we're like, no worries, we've got standard work for that. Let me show you the standard work.
の真ん中の上から4分の1のところを左手でつまみます。次に左手でつまんだところから延長した肩と裾のところを右手でつまみます。あとは払って袖のところから折り込むようにして畳めば、そうです、こんなに綺麗にできます。
Do you think you'd be able to follow that standard work? Probably not, right? It's
Absolutely
not
not.
in the language that we speak. The video content is not clear, right? There's music playing in the background. It's not clearly understandable, right? So if you don't have standard work, this is what it feels like for people doing their jobs, right? It feels like it's in a different language. It feels like it's going too fast. It feels like I can't ask any questions, right? It feels overwhelming and very confusing, right? So it is about creating standard work. And when you don't have it, that's when you have firefighting. Wouldn't this be much better? So, standard work, this is an activity that we do in our black belt class. This standard work is very understandable, right? It's just pictures with numbers, so we know which sequence to go in with an adjustment or a objective or directions under each number, right? It doesn't have to be rocket science, right? This would be much better. And I'm sure we could even make it better than that. I have a company that they have committed to creating standard work for all of their processes. And they use a lot of fixtures in what they're doing in manufacturing. So for each fixture, they're putting a barcode because QR codes don't etch correctly. So they're putting a barcode, they're etching a barcode on the fixture. And then they're having tablets, so industrial tablets on the floor. So what they do is when that person puts the fixture in the machine, they scan the barcode with the tablet and they watch a video about how to use that particular fixture. That is standard work because they found they had three different trainers or setup techs that were doing things three different ways. So that was their commitment to eliminating that waste. So we'll go back to our poll and we'll take a look at our poll and see where we are. So the next question is, do you have standard work for all of your processes at work? So yes or no. Do you have standard work for all of your processes at work? And it looks like we're split down the middle. So half of you do and half of you do not. If you don't have standard work, enter the reasons why not. So if you don't have standard work, enter the reasons why not. A lot of companies will say it takes too long, it's too much time, we don't have time for that. We can't agree on a standard, everybody does it differently, etc. All right, let's continue on and keep talking. Okay, so standard work creates freedom, not rigidity. So I wanted to share this with you if you haven't seen it before. This is on scoutlife.org. So scoutlife.org, publisher of Boys Life, so talking about Boy Scouts. So how to display and fold the American flag. So here is their standard work. They have obviously a document that talks about it. They have a video up here of how to do it. And then down here, they have a visual of how to do it, right? So this is all encompassing. So no matter what kind of learner you are, you can clearly understand how to fold a flag the appropriate way. So we have the video, we have the words descriptor, and we have this nice pictorial standard work information. So great example of standard work that creates freedom, not rigidity. So root cause number two, too many priorities. I think we can all attest to that. I have my list of priorities right here today, of course, on a Post-it note. So what does it look like? Everything again is urgent or hot. We can all relate to that. Constant task switching. Constant task switching. That means I'm trying to focus on an email and then my phone rings. I'm trying to focus on an email, somebody comes to my door. I'm trying to have lunch and somebody comes in, right? Or ask a question, or Teams Messenger or whatever it is pops up on your screen, whatever tool you use. Work starts but doesn't finish. So we have work just kind of half baked hanging out there. The lean truth is that starting more does not mean finishing more. And sometimes that's what people like to do is they like to start a whole bunch of different projects, right? But that doesn't mean they're actually going to finish them. So too many priorities is definitely another cause. Root cause number 3, problems are fixed, not solved. So what does that look like? Workarounds, right? Workaround is a temporary situation. A workaround is not a permanent solution. Or something like just this once. Or we'll create a band-aid, we'll come back to it later when we have more time. And guess what? Later never happens. Or a permanent countermeasure. So if you follow the A3 problem solving methodology, you know that there is a step in there to institute a countermeasure. And the countermeasure is not meant to be permanent. It is meant to be able to keep the water from coming out the dam, right? Until you come up with a permanent solution, but they can't stand there forever with the finger in the hole. Temporary fixes again become permanent. And the lean question is, what allowed this problem to occur? So what allowed this problem to occur is a good question to ask. Root cause number 4 is invisible work. So again, it goes back to my passion about heroics or Herculean efforts. So work is invisible and delays are discovered late, right? So if we don't understand really what our process looks like through the eyes of a value stream map, if there's some invisible work being done, that we could have delays that are coming late. Leaders interrupt for updates. So they're constantly asking for updates and stress increases. So again, visual management helps us to surface problems early. And you don't need a PhD, you don't need a black belt or master black belt to do a value stream map, right? Or to have visual management as an indicator of whether things are going well or not. And then, of course, root cause number 5, no time to improve, right? So it's a common belief. We're too busy to improve, to do things like create standard work or make things visible or insert your reasoning here. The lean reality is without improvement, time, chaos sustains itself. So if somebody says that there's no time to do improvements, right, eventually you're going to run out of time because you're going to lose your customers. And you're going to have all the time in the world on your hands because you will have no work, because your customers are going to get frustrated and leave if they don't receive a quality product or a quality service. So how does lean reduce firefighting? So lean doesn't mean more tools. This is not a tool discussion. It is tools can be helpful, but it really has to do a lot with your culture and your climate and really what you want it to be. Tools doesn't mean more paperwork. And again, standard work does not necessarily mean it has to be a document, a paper document. Back in the day when ISO first started, yes, it had to be a Word document. It was a paper document. And if anybody remembers, we had binders, right, full of papers and procedures and standard work. Standard work needs to reflect how to do that particular process. And it doesn't matter if it's a document, a visual, or a video. Lean does mean fewer surprises by eliminating waste and variation, better decisions, and less urgency. Now, that doesn't mean that we are slacking off. That just means there's less urgency in trying to solve a problem before you go to get that product out the door. So look, it's Friday, it's 11:55 a.m. Central Time. We all know that if you're working in an environment where everything needs to go out by the end of the week, some people are having a hard day today, right? They get told today or even yesterday, guess what? You have to work overtime this weekend. Great. Really, that's not what people really want to hear. And this concept of utilizing lean tools and concepts, again, concepts more than anything else, allows us for better decisions and less urgency or firefighting. So as you know, the first tool we're going to talk about is standard work, right? So standard work reduces variation and waste because standard work is telling somebody step by step how to do it. It creates clarity. So this is the gold standard. So when I worked in electronics, we used to call it the gold board, right? So the gold board was the standard board, right? This is what all the other ones should look like. It's the best known way to do something today. That doesn't mean we can't make improvements tomorrow, but it's clear steps. It's owned by the people that do the work. what I always tell people is you don't want me to come and create the standard work for you because there's no way you're going to like my interpretation of it or will I do it correctly. The only people that know how to do it correctly is the people that do the actual work. Now you may be thinking, Katie, I work in an industry, or I work in a situation where we have 2 or 3 shifts, and it's always this battle between the shifts of who's doing it right and who's doing it wrong, right? You need to work on collaboration, right? And you need to hear everyone. You need to have each shift present how they do it and why they do it that way. Now, sometimes it's a very logical reason for why. Other times there's underlying reasons for why, like maybe PM needs to be done on the machine and we didn't know it. And sometimes the why is because somebody told them that, or that was their perception of right. So if a task causes questions, it needs standard work. So let me show you some standard work. So for many of you, you know that we have animals. So our household is 1 dog, 2 cats, and 3 horses. This is what I create for when my brother comes and watches our house when we go on vacation. Yes, I'm a nerd, but guess what? He appreciates it, and so do I. Now, I have it arranged in this manner for a couple reasons. My brother is dyslexic and he has a hard time reading sometimes. So he really appreciates any visuals that I can get him. He can read, it's not that he can't, it's just he wants to make sure he does it right. So we do things like color coding things, we do things with labels, we try to make it as apparent as possible, highlights in different colors. This is what we do. And this is what works for us. Did it take long? No, it probably didn't take me that long, maybe a couple hours to do this the first time. Now, since I have it done, if anything changes, I can just update the standard work. It's not that big of a deal anymore. But this is what worked for him. So he was able to reference this when we go on vacation or anybody that comes to babysit. So that's standard work. The second tool is visual management. So visual management is the concept is embraced with 5S. 5S is all about visual management, making status obvious and reducing interruptions. So some examples would be sample boards, or simple boards or sample boards, Kanban, and maybe a do, doing, done indicator. So some questions would be, how do you know what to work on? Kanban board could help. How do you know if something is falling behind? Now, I have a customer that said, we went and talked about visual management, and they do some welding on some parts. And they told me, they said, it's actually easier for us to show what's wrong than what's right. Because what's right is one thing. What's wrong can look like all of these different things. So they have basically an unacceptable board, right? Where the board shows if any of the welds look like anything like you see here, then it would be considered unacceptable. So as opposed to here's the one right way to do it, it's easier for them to show the unacceptable options. So I thought that was a great idea. Again, Kanban boards, if you're not familiar with them, I just took a screenshot of somebody's. I suggest for Kanban boards, if you haven't done one, start with a whiteboard. There's some great videos on Kanban boards on YouTube. You can check out our channel. But it's very simple. It is a way to manage flow in work. So some people just start with to do, in progress, and done. And then you just have to figure out what moves. So for most people, that may be like in a dealership for a Kubota or for a car, what moves is that service order. So that, or that work order would move through the status of to do, in progress, and done. In a manufacturing plant, that would be your customer order. That would move from your different stations that you would have. And so your columns would be different than mine. I have seen miraculous results from just making work visible, making flow visible on a Kanban board. Again, start with a whiteboard, very simple, and then move on to technology from there. Number 3, limit work in progress or process. So the problem is that we have too many things started and too little things finished, of course. And so what we want to do is cap active work and finish before starting new. So that focus creates flow. And the way I think about it is think of a restaurant, right? So a restaurant has their own limit to work in process. And the limit is how many seats or chairs or tables they have. They're not going to try to seat you in a place that has no seats or chairs, right? They're going to tell you the wait is going to be an hour. So that's their lead time, right? And you decide as the customer whether the lead time is acceptable to you or not. So, how can you limit work in process? So, sometimes we can do that systematically, where the system won't allow us to be able to schedule so much work, or we may have to do it from a process standpoint. It could be a visual standpoint too. We can't take any more. That bin is full. We have to wait till that goes down. We can't possibly ship anymore. Our shipping area is full, or that truck is full. We can no longer ship anymore, right? So limit work in process. And then the next one is daily problem solving. So, daily problem solving. So, a shift from reacting to learning. So, truly understand the problem you are trying to solve. And I would say this is the number one reason why people struggle with these things is that they don't understand the problem they're trying to solve. And I did another free video on creating a measurable problem statement that you can check out on YouTube. But in our problem and understanding our problem, we want to ask questions like, what's happening or what happened? Bring me the data. I want to see quantitative data. What's the impact? What's it causing? Well, what's the target? What should it be? And why did it happen? Now, remember, we're not blaming people, we're looking at process. And then how can we fix the process and prevent the problem from happening again? Now, in the PDCA cycle, we are taught that 50% of our time should be spent in planning, which means understanding the problem we're trying to solve. Your problem statement is the address to your fire. So if somebody calls 911 to report a fire, the first data point that you are asked is the address. If you can't adequately provide that information, the fire department would have a hard time finding the fire, and they'd have to rely on things like smoke signals and trying to smell the smoke in the air and word of mouth from others. A clearly defined problem statement with data will help you to put out your fires. Otherwise, it's just all smoke signals. So remember in PDCA, 50% of your time should be spent in planning and understanding what problem you're trying to solve. Next tool is leader standard work. So leader behaviors that help reduce chaos are predictable check-ins. I am a huge proponent for daily stand-ups. We have folks here from Cadence, tier board structure, awesome, and meetings. Daily stand-ups are 15-minute check-in to see how things are going and if anybody needs any help. And I use a Kanban board to facilitate that. You have to be quick. You have to have an agenda. This is not a long, drawn-out meeting. It is a check-in. Ask problem-solving questions and reinforce standards, right? So protecting your improvement time. Now, what does that mean? So when I worked at Plexus, we made a radical decision in the IT department. We said, no meeting Friday afternoons. Oh my gosh, is the world going to collapse as we know it? No, no meeting Friday afternoons meant we spent that time for improvement, for innovation, or to be able to catch up on the work that we were doing. We didn't schedule on purpose any meetings Friday afternoon, so Friday after lunch, to be able to dedicate that time to those things. Now, does that mean if a customer said, hey, we need a meeting or we have an emergency, we say, no, it's Friday, no meeting? No, of course we didn't say that, but we did our best to be able to adhere to that standard, and we had remarkable results from it. Reflect also, if you are a leader, how might my behavior unintentionally create urgency? Your people are watching you. They're watching how you behave. They're watching what you say and what you don't say and what you hear. I was with an organization once that they were preparing for doing a presentation on a particular topic. And it came out that the leader of the organization had casually mentioned maybe we'll present that at the next board of directors, but never committed to it. They just offhandedly said it, and the agenda wasn't set for board of directors, and it sent this team into a flurry of insane activities, which, by the way, never came to fruition. They never had to present to the board of directors. They wasted so much time and energy creating something for nothing. So make sure that you check yourself. Make sure that you understand that your people are watching you and they're listening to you. And sometimes they're anticipating things that might not be true. Now, what does leader standard work look like? And I'm sharing this with permission. This is a great example of leader standard work. This is from Green Bay Packaging to Pure Shipping Container. This is their standard work. They have their production manager standard work on the left, and their other leader standard work on the right. As you know, as you can see, they have even a little reminder of their cultural values. Some people, this is in Excel, so some people do it in Excel. I have others that they print these out and they carry a clipboard with this information on there and they fill it out throughout the day. And this has been a game changer for their organization. Now, where did they get this from? Well, they got some inspiration from Hormel. So this is the leader standard work from Hormel. So they shared this information with me. Again, you have to figure out what works best for you and be able to plan your day. But I think they did a great job taking this as inspiration and then going ahead and making it their own. All of their leaders within that division use that leader standard work I showed you a couple slides back. What are some key takeaways today? So some key takeaways are we have firefighting because we don't have standard work. There are too many projects, too many priorities, problems are fixed and not solved. We have invisible work and there's no time to improve. Lean concepts can help to create flow. So again, standard work. Standard work can be as simple as what I showed you for that catapult activity. Remember, we don't want it to be as complex as the folding the t-shirt in Japanese activity. It can be a video. We have to recognize that we have a whole generation of new learners coming up that are not going to learn by reading a Word document. Visual management, limiting work in process, daily problem solving, like those daily stand-ups, 15-minute check-in. By the way, a daily stand-up is not micromanaging. You may do tier boards also. I have a couple customers that do tier boards. They do a fantastic job at it, and they have understanding of what the status is for everything and where our problems are. And of course, leader standard work. So some individual reflection that I would not ask you to share on the poll or in the chat. Am I fighting my own fires or am I fighting the fires of other people? If you're fighting the fires of other people, how can we empower them or coach them to be able to do that themselves? And again, it all starts with understanding the problem you're trying to solve. Think about one reoccurring fire that you deal with and what triggers it. So what triggers that fire or what sparks that fire, right? And what lean tool could help? Could you leverage that standard work template that I just showed? Can you use visual management? Can we do WIP limits? Can we have some problem solving? Do we have to be mindful of our leader habits? So what small change can you make in 7 days? Document one process. So I have a customer that uses a tool called Dazuki. So Dazuki helps you to create standard work. If you are online at all, you know you've seen the advertisements for Scribe. There's another one called Tulip and another one called Polka, which is kind of a play on Poka-yoke. So there are tools out there that you can use to help you create standard work in a variety of different manners. Create a visual board, right? So start with a whiteboard. And then once you have that whiteboard where you want it, again, it displays the status of something and shows flow. That's what Kanban board does. You can use Monday.com. I have several customers that use Monday. Airtable, Asana, whatever tool works for you. Monday is very visual. So if you have a lot of visual learners, Monday is a great tool for that. Ask why instead of fixing it yourself, right? And take the time to truly understand the problem and gather the data first. It's a fire. I know it's burning, but we need the address to that fire. And stop starting new work mid-task, right? So you have to be able to finish your tasks. And instead of having a variety of tasks that are sitting there open, you need to be able to see those to completion. So fighting fires or firefighting feels heroic. Flow is what actually moves the organization forward, right? So firefighting feels like, yes, we were able to do this. But guess what? It's going to pop up again. And flow is what actually moves your organization forward. So this is just a reminder that we have free lean training every month. So next month, we're going to talk about little data, big insights, using quick metrics to drive daily improvement. These are all free. I don't spam you and I don't bother you. I just have those out there for free. And as a reminder, we have some services. We do coaching and mentoring. We do Lean Six Sigma training, so white, yellow, green, and black, problem solving, value stream map, 5S, etc. And project management consulting and training too. And of course, Kaizen events. So thank you for attending today's session. I greatly appreciate it. If one of your team members wasn't able to make today's session, no worries. We're going to be posting this on YouTube as soon as we're done, and I'll be publishing the link to that in our social media pages on LinkedIn and Facebook. Thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions, I'll hang out here for a few minutes.